Islamabad. I'm assuming you're in Islamabad.
Very bad. Sir, we are live. Assalamu alaikum. This is Kamal Masroor from CxO Global Forum. आज हमारे साथ जो है वो Mr. Akbar Ali Shah है. He is the general manager of RB Hygiene. Sir, thank you so much for your time. Finally, we got a chance to have a session together. Thank you so much for your time. So,
Thank
sir,
you.
would like to hear about your brief intro. Who is Akbar Ali Shah? Where he came from? So, थोड़ा सा अपना brief देगा.
Sure. So, Kaval, as you just mentioned, right now I'm the country manager for RB Hygiene Pakistan.
Okay.
Uh, I have spent around 2 decades in FMCG. The
Okay.
FMCG industry. I started working with Unilever, moved to RB, so two MNCs. I would say around a dozen countries. So I was out of Pakistan for a good 11 years, managing Middle East, North Africa, lived in Saudi, lived in Iran, lived in Morocco.
Yeah.
So managed business in this cluster, and then came back to Pakistan after long. But I'll tell you a little bit about myself more. I come from a military family. So I was born in Peshawar, and then raised in Lahore and Rawalpindi cantonments, and then Karachi cantonment. Eventually, because my dad was posted in Karachi,
Okay.
at that, so I was graduating. No, I was finishing my college. So
Okay.
looked around, and there was a business school called IBA, and I thought, let's. I heard a lot about it, so I applied for it. I went to IBA, and that was my first, let's say, first time when I tasted corporate sector or management or acting or business. So good stint at IBA, which groomed me for the corporate sector.
Okay.
Landed a job at Unilever and started with Unilever in Karachi, in field and in the head office roles. Spent around 3 years with them, and then moved to RB. Spent around 2 years in Pakistan with RB, and the
Okay.
rest around 11 years in different RB world. And then came back in 2017 mid. So it's
Okay.
been now my fourth year in Pakistan.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. So, I think you are just say you have mentioned कि from Peshawar to Lahore to Islamabad and Karachi. So you've got all the exposure of all the cultures in Pakistan, I guess.
So I tell you, when I look at on a hindsight, I think it really worked and helped me.
Yeah.
One thing which was very common throughout was a change. Every time I entered in a school, the my father will get a transfer after every 2 years to a new
Yeah.
canton, a new school, and new class fellows, and new syllabus, sometimes new province altogether.
Yeah.
And
There's always a learning.
and absolutely. So I think which what became absolute nature was that change is something which is absolutely there. So
Yeah.
it's nothing to be. In fact, it's part of life. So when I moved different parts of the world, whether they were different cultures or different businesses or different challenges, it came very naturally. So I never felt that what has happened. So I saw a lot of people who struggle with these kind of changes, but I
Yeah.
think when on hindsight, when I look at it, it really helped.
Okay. Okay. So thank you so much. So just tell me about what is RB hygiene. Is this something separate from the routine products?
Right. So I'll tell you a little bit about RB history so that we could understand the
Yeah.
context here. Rekit bin Kiza, which is known as RB,
Mm.
came in its existing form in 1999.
Okay.
Before 99, it was called Reckitt and Coleman. It was a
Okay.
different group. Bin Kiza took over Reckitt and Coleman in 1999 to form an entity called RB. Now,
Okay.
RB owns brands, a lot of world-renowned brands, over 50 world-renowned brands,
Okay.
and these brands have gone through various stages, and they have their own life cycles. So some of the
Okay.
brands are 150 years old, and some of the brands are 20 years old.
嗯
And some of the brands are 30 years old.
嗯
And some of the brands are 40 years old. possibly 20 years old. So we have a legacy. The brands have the legacy of really 100 plus years.
Okay.
And Pakistan Reckitt and Coleman was set up in 1957, and Reckitt Bin was formed in 1909. And from then onwards, we had a vision to become a number one player in OTC category, besides over the counter drugs.
Counter
So
drugs.
the three categories in which we started operating was health, hygiene, and home. And these were the three categories which we went after. In 2015, we acquired a big organization called Mead Johnson. Mead Johnson had a nutrition business across the world, and with that acquisition, we became pretty sizable. So our health portfolio became sizable because we've been acquiring smaller companies with a big acquisition. The game changed, and we also realized that health requires a very different kind of approach, from go
Yeah.
to market to
Mm.
consumer to regulation to working with different regulatory authorities. So we
Exactly.
decided to separate the two organizations and make two organizations. One which had the, let's say, the legacy brands, which was the foundation for the business, which we now call RB Hygiene, and the other one is RB Health. So we have some brands over there as well from the legacy RB, but mostly it had a pharmaceutical brands, healthcare brands. All of them are Most of them are over the counter, and in different parts of the world. So now it's basically hygiene and health are two different
Okay.
business units.
Okay.
One is headquartered in Amsterdam, the other one is headquartered in London,
Excellent.
but it remains under the same group.
Okay, excellent. So I think this 2020 was very a tough year as the COVID situation we have, faced. So I think RB Hygiene was the best fit, and आप लोगों की क्या actually strategy थी to, not only uh, implying in your organization but for the public sector as
So I tell you, Kamal, obviously the COVID came out of blue,
well.
so nobody was expecting it. Though there were talks that look, a certain pandemic of this nature
Yeah.
can come at any point in time. But I think from a readiness point of view, I think the world was caught unaware, and
Exactly.
it started in 26th of December, and suddenly there was a snowball. By the time it hit Pakistan, it was around 7th, 8th of March, or possibly 10th March, if I recall.
Actually,
Um,
it was 26th February when government said to shut down the schools. I guess that was the time.
that's true. That's true, and I think it was very proactively done at that time. And 8th, 9th March was the day when we decided to
Work from
vacate the office and work from home. And to
home.
date, we have not come back to the office. So our offices remain optional. We have today we have I think in my office today there are only 5% of the people, of
Okay.
the regular workforce. So it's very very optional. People just come just to check, maybe if they have to collaborate. So it has really really radically changed the way we used to work, and I will talk about the pandemic, the other part of it. But it is also redefining the future of work, which is something that the world will see in the months to come, and it's another topic to talk about. The So coming back to pandemic, the first challenge was to how do we keep going, which means how do we keep people safe first, because we don't know how bad it's going to be and who's going to get hit. So we want to make sure that people are safe at their homes, and if they are at work, they are also safe. So implementing SOPs, global WHO records, as well as the local government recommendations, how to keep the factories going, or will the factory be going? Because there were also confusion around essential goods. Um, Public transport was stopped, So how do we continue bring labor to the factory, and how do we keep the factory going? And while on the side we were struggling, we were also facing a lot of challenges. People complaining, stock, shelves going out of stock. Suddenly there were 10x, 20x kind of demand for some of our hygiene brands. And I will tell you an interesting story. I was thinking that, look, now the stores are closed, the factories are barely functional. People need the products because they depend on these products. So
Yeah.
one of e-commerce, I could see that how e-commerce was building up in the rest of
Yeah.
the world. And we could see how it was happening in Singapore or in the US or in Europe. So I started working with some of the e-commerce players around their radios. While I was at it, I received a call and I thought it was a prank call. And somebody said that, look, the president wants to speak with you, and they are looking for your number.
Oh.
And I'm really sure that it was because I don't know him personally,
Okay.
and I not could connect the dot that professionally why would he like to reach out.
Okay.
Um, So I kind of asked my team to check, and then after a few minutes, another call and another call, another call, and a couple of
Oh.
so I really clear that there is someone really looking.
Okay.
So I shared my number and I said, let's talk. And I received a call from President Alvi in during those days, and he wanted to check on supply chain and the stocks.
Okay.
And how and I'm sharing with you because it was quite a desperate situation,
Right.
on
Yeah.
all ends. People rely on our brands,
Mm.
and therefore it was about how do we ensure that people get it, and which means how do I ensure the safety of my people, safety of the factory, ensuring that the factory, and it's not that I produce everything in the factory, or we
Yeah.
produce everything in the factory. It's about somebody is doing bottles, somebody is doing caps, somebody is doing
Exactly.
printing, the artworks, somebody is logistics. So unless the whole economy is working, it's difficult to produce and make a product available. So
Yeah.
quite a challenging task at that time. We were led by government of Sindh. We were also assured a lot of support from the president himself, and yes, we then continued. But no organization can come up with or deliver on a demand of a 10x all of a sudden. So that remained a challenge. So we could
Yeah.
deliver certain numbers with a maximum capacity, but there was certain limitation. Over a period of time, we obviously started expanding, and also a demand became more normalized rather than a
Mm.
panic buying.
Mm.
So it was more organized. But we learned, and gradually, I think the industry also picked up. So there was
Mm.
sufficient
Mhm.
stocks. People also got educated. Social distancing, SOPs
Yeah.
also helped
Yeah.
in this whole scenario. By the time some stability, I went to NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, who
Okay.
was right that at that time General Afzal was managing the pandemic,
Okay.
um, and we extended our support. We set aside around 50 crore rupees of investments for COVID, and it was parked for educating people. It was parked for expansion. It was also, we set aside a certain amount for PPEs, for
Okay.
food donations, for
Mm.
product donations. Whatever we felt, and NDMA felt that is a need at that point in time.
Okay.
So we played our role in that sense as well, and we started disinfecting a lot of location. I think we disinfected around over 200 public places. From schools, hospitals, mostly hospitals. We regularly started disinfecting through our
Okay.
products and through our teams.
Okay.
So yeah, challenging year on all aspects.
Okay. So excellent. Actually, this was the thing I was wanted to discuss with you कि आपके जो बेसिक प्रोडक्ट्स हैं एंड आरबी हाइजीन का एक बहुत बड़ा रोल रहा है ड्यूरिंग दिस कोविड बिकॉज आपके मोस्ट ऑफ द प्रोडक्ट्स जो हैं वो रिलेट कर रहे थे विद द सिचुएशन के जी लोगों को आपके प्रोडक्ट्स की सबसे ज़्यादा ज़रूरत क्या थी उस टाइम पे। सो वो क्या चैलेंजेस आप लोगों ने एक्चुअली फेस किए? एक तो आपने बिल्कुल ये बताया कि प्रोडक्शन के भी प्रोसेसेस होते हैं, आपकी सप्लाई चेन, सप्लाई मैनेजमेंट का भी एक आपका प्रोसेस था। और फिर यू नो टोल्ड अस के इन ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के साथ भी आप कनेक्ट हुए, तो उन चैलेंजेस को आप लोगों ने कैसे फेस किया? बिकॉज़ एकदम से डिमांड बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ गई होगी, एक नॉर्मल रूटीन से बढ़ गया, फिर लिमिटेशंस भी आपके पास आ गई। तो किस तरह कोप अप किया इस चीज़ को?
Right. I think, well, there were immediate challenges, first of all, which we had to address. And the immediate challenge was the safety of people.
Yeah,
And linked with that was, okay, business continuity.
yeah,
So those were addressed by putting some SOPs together. We over communicated to the team. We parked the existing operating model, and we on a, I would say, on a daily call with the larger organization to keep them updated on what's happening, because
okay,
we could also understand that there would be panic in their families also, in their own. Everyone has a larger families, right? Um, but by putting the SOPs and overly communicating, we addressed quite a lot of anxiety. And then, as I mentioned, we worked closely with the government, which allowed us to continue business.
okay.
The public transport remained a challenge.
Yeah,
Availability of remained a challenge. Vendor management was big issue. But whatever we could manage within that time frame. Our biggest hurdle was mid-term supply chain.
okay.
Because you always have some reserves for raw materials. You can do so much, but Pakistan is not self-sufficient in everything. So
Yeah,
we import a lot of things. So supply chain, like the rest of the world, China was badly impacted, and China was a source of a lot of raw materials which were coming, and how to continue business operations through vendors in China. And by the time, if a factory has produced, how to move that stock from that factory to the airport, and airline is functional. So airline fares were changing every day, and not everyone was functional. And by the time flight, it will be an air freight, and you do air freight rather than a sea shipment. So the cost was
okay.
going phenomenally high. And then it reached to, let's say, used to reach to Dubai port, and from Dubai port, and it's non-functional. So you'll again have to figure out, how do you bring it to Karachi port?
Right.
Uh, so it was, I think, if I have to summarize it, it was supply chain disruption, a global supply chain disruption,
Okay.
which
Okay.
impacted big time. But again, as I said, I think it was a part and parcel. One, rather than working on a conventional supply chain, we engaged with an air freight and tried to mitigate some of the timelines. But also early management with the vendors, early information of what we will need, placing early orders proactively. That also helped us. And then I would say the other side of it was some normalization of the panic itself. So the
Okay.
demand did not gain
Yeah.
20x, but let's say remain 5x, still out of stocks, but to a very large extent we could manage it. We also saw that there were a lot of counterfeits, which got the opportunity, to fill the
Yeah.
gap. So we
Yeah.
had to work with our brand protection teams, to work with FIA and law enforcement agencies to
Yeah.
take, because we are playing, they are playing with people's health, and rely on it. And if it's not really the product, it may not be able to disinfect. So we worked with them as well. And then I think this was midterm, so early and a midterm, and then the long term challenge was, what will be the future of work?
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that mean? Will that demand remain as high, or how consumers are going to evolve, how the shop channels are going to evolve, how technology will become absolutely critical backbone of what we are going to do? And that was a long term plan, and therefore some work started off at that time on working with startups, working with some technology partners.
Excellent. So, as you are also mentioned कि आप startups के साथ भी जो है वो you connected and you would like to listen to them. So what exactly actually you're looking towards कि आपको किस तरह के startups और किस तरह के ideas में आपका ज़्यादा interest है और during the whole journey connecting with startups क्या challenges actually आपको face हुए हैं? Actually these are the two questions. So उसमें आपको क्या lacking feel हुई है working with startups instead of they have great ideas and क्या चीज़ है जहाँ पे वो stuck होते हैं क्या challenges हैं and और दूसरा ये कि आप अपने perspective से वो क्या चीज़ देख रहे होते हैं startups में.
Right. Right. So Kamal, एक दो बातें मैं आपको बताऊंगा. One, as an FMCG, as an industry, global industry,
Yeah.
it was not on a forefront of technology, or embracing technology. I think,
Okay.
financial industry did very well in embracing
Yeah.
technology quicker. FMCG remained very conventional to a very large extent. I won't say they were laggards, but as the industry, it was not amongst the first one or two. It was
Okay.
somewhere in the middle. So therefore, it required an assertive action from FMCG to understand, embrace, and move quickly. Uh, it was not, we were not ready for it. So we had to really force ourselves 4 years, 5 years ahead, and really accelerate. So that was our starting point. And therefore we wanted to first highlight what are our issues, business issues.
Okay.
So by function, we did shortlisting of real challenges in the business. So let's say what are the challenges in finance function, what are the challenges in marketing, sales, HR, or supply chain, as I mentioned. And therefore, if these are the challenges, what are possible way forwards and what are the solutions? And do we have solutions in technology?
Okay.
Uh, and mostly, we had solutions in technology, and those were the efficient ones. And therefore, we started scanning vendors, scanning partners who could possibly help us in solving those issues. Now, those issues were, I won't say very peculiar to RB. They were very industry specific issues, but we could, I would say, explain our problem explicitly that look, this is my business problem, and I'm ready to embrace technology if there's a solution. And that's therefore we were looking for partners who could do it. So and that's where we started scanning. When we scanned, we looked at some of the startups, some of them who had gone through a Series A, some of them were at an early stage. We also looked at international partners, vendors, but I think Pakistani startup scene was really good because it's same culture, same challenges, same issues,
Yeah.
and also cost effective. And if it's a startup, they are also very agile. It's not like a fixed solutions and trying to customize. So we found some really interesting way forwards. Some really great partners in every city. I mean, we have partners in Islamabad. We've seen great work from Lahore. We have partners in Karachi. So it's like it's not limited to one location at all.
Excellent. Excellent.
So I can elaborate. For example, we had a how do we increase brand penetration unconventionally?
Okay.
Uh, Brand penetration is bread and butter of any FMCG.
Yeah.
Um, and every investment that goes on media is with the intention of brand penetration or increase penetration of your brand. It's a large market of 200 million people. It's a 3% of world population. Therefore, it remains relevant. Everyone needs a bar soap, let's say, or everyone wants to brush their teeth, and everyone wants
Yeah.
a shampoo, right? So how do we continue to drive penetration? We know challenges, but how do we drive it? And we have been driving it through very conventional fixed mediums, which were working brilliantly.
Okay.
But now, is there a change? And should we look at technology? And is there a way we can do it faster?
Excellent.
So one answer is, well, you see, digital marketing is a solution. Well, that's just one part of it, from a conventional media to digital marketing. And then obviously, when you open it up like an octopus. There's so many
Mm.
digital marketing, how do you manage the whole funnel. But the other one was the offline market, because still, even if we say, look, 10% of the people, or let's say 60% of the people are engaging with the content and with your brand in an online world because they are digitally connected. The fact means that e-commerce is still 3%, 4%, or less than that of any business, which means they are still buying from conventional channels. They're watching digital, buying conventional. So how do you, connect the whole consumer journey where you engage them here, but you also engage the offline and you digitize the offline in a certain way that you could create a full roadmap and a full unique consumer view. So this was something which we started working on couple of, I would say, mid of last year, and with that, we started looking for vendors around who could digitize our offline consumer journey, which I would say a very it's a breakthrough idea because no market is doing it, and in fact also in the industry we could figure out that no one was doing it. So it was very interesting, exciting to to digitize all of it. And when we started doing it, we used AI, we used satellite imagery, we used, I give you example, a city like Karachi, which was always treated as one city, and let's say one city approach. So if you want to really focus on Karachi, you ask anyone, they'll say, yes, I have a Karachi plot. So there's a national plot and I have a Karachi plot. Uh, but it had to be beyond that, because still this was also very conventional. So what we did was we split Karachi into 800 different neighborhoods, and we could do that through satellite. We After splitting, we did that through the catchment areas of those neighborhoods. That which are the shops in each of those neighborhoods, and who are these shops, and what are these shops? What are they selling? We geotagged all those shops. We Through machine learning, we figured out the population of each of those neighborhoods, and those are not standard neighborhoods. They were neighborhoods based on population slash catchment areas. And then we looked at our brand penetration numbers in each of those neighborhoods. So suddenly we had 800 penetration points of a city. Now, if you go back to conventional marketing or conventional research company and ask them what is my penetration, they will give you urban national and rural national. And if you push them, they'll say, okay, probably Karachi is this penetration and Lahore is this, but nothing beyond that. And now suddenly we had 800 penetration points to work on. And therefore, 800 customizations were possible to win in each of these neighborhoods. Previously, we could have never imagined that this was possible. Um, so we engaged our, below the line agencies accordingly. We selected the neighborhoods which we want to activate. We worked with those retailers in those neighborhoods and those consumers with a value proposition, which was so we could customize literally any offering for those 800, and then we could retarget, or let's say remarket through digital, by picking up the offline and creating a big data solution. So there were so many data layers that we had put together. So it became a very different way of working only around penetration model. Um, on supply chain, we were looking at Uberization of trucking and logistics, where we have 200 plus distributors right from Hunza down to Peshawar, and down to Gwadar. So how do we? And the one big challenge in FMCG is that most of these distributors, they are struggling with the dates. When are they going to get the delivery? So they have those delivery dates, and they get it on that date, let's say with 70% accuracy, but they don't have a real time information what's really happening. And can they trust this on this date? They will need a payment to be arranged. But if they have the visibility of where their truck is and when are they going to get it, they can arrange labor for offload. They can arrange payments at the right time. It becomes super efficient. So the other part, around supply chain. And the third one was around forecasting. When we are doing, so we call it now smart forecast, based on predictive analytics and, again, AI, right from a Kirana store. Typically in a Kirana store, there'll be father in the morning, son sitting in the evening, nobody in the afternoon, or maybe someone in the afternoon, but nobody has digitized these Kirana stores, and therefore they struggle with their forecast. And how do you pick up their forecast, and then how to pick up 300,000 stores forecast across the country, and really streamline. You plan it not manually, not based on your just baselines, but you can see some trends and insights. So a lot of opportunity. We are working with someone who is digitizing kirana stores in Pakistan with the machines, and which also allows them to have credit, at the back, which is a big enabler for a kirana store to expand its throughput. So a lot of work started off. Then we started working with social commerce, which was the step ahead of e-commerce. So we said, okay,
Okay.
yeah, in India and Indonesia and in China, social commerce picking up faster than e-commerce, is growing 2x
Okay.
versus e-commerce. So we have so many TikTokers here, we have so many Instagram influencers, but can they
Mhm.
also and can they also virtual shops? And can we empower these youngsters, literally 10,000 youngsters, to become entrepreneurs? Uh, and we started working with one of the partners, and we started engaging, and we piloted something in December, some very interesting results. We learned, and we are evolving on it. But it's very interesting how the social commerce scene is a plausible area, which is a very different way of selling things or marketing things,
Great.
away from the typical digital marketing funnel. Yeah, so I mean, we are working with so many. We're working with fintech solutions, payments,
Okay.
um, and so on and so forth. And then I also have this, this. Um, I always believed in Pakistani talent, and I've seen, I think it's more around opportunity and sharpening the skills, and helping, and network. I think that's where, Kanwal, you are doing a great job at putting these people together to network and add value, because
Yeah.
I think that's an area which is absolutely needed. So what we did, we started expanding some of our service providers to other markets. We showcased, we marketed their projects that they have done with us internally in RB with different companies, where we generated interest, and they wanted to, have those services in markets like, Nigeria or Indonesia, and there's a coming from Egypt. So, and they are sitting here. These are the vendors, which are sitting here, and providing services to, Far East and Middle East and Africa.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much, Akbar Ali Shah. I think it was a great learning for me as well. We had a great discussion, and there are so many areas, I guess, okay, local जो vendors हैं या जो innovative companies हैं, if they are looking towards the opportunities, I think these guidelines are the best for fit for, working with an organization like RB Hygiene. So there are a lot to discuss. Inshallah, I think we'll engage you in next time as well. और आपसे फिर और भी चीजों पे हम inshallah discuss करेंगे, and we'll start learning with you कि जी what are the challenges and local ecosystem हम चीजों को किस तरह cope up करते हैं. But time is very short. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll stay in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kaul. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Looking forward.